Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this November 6, 2014 edition of Nightcast. Riot police have fired tear gas and water cannon during clashes with demonstrators, as at least 100,000 people marched through Brussels in the first mass protest against government austerity measures. Protesters, you'll see them in this video, they overturned cars and threw paving stones and fireworks during the protest against economic reforms that will extend the pension age, it'll contain wages, and it'll cut public services. The government says the austerity measures are essential to keep the budget deficit within European Union constraints. This is our opening report for tonight, friends. And our video player has hung up already tonight. There's more in this video, but we have been having some problems with the computer, an expensive computer that plays these videos. But the problem relates to the operating system, and I've downloaded all the files and software you need to completely clean install your Windows 7. I'm not going to Windows 8 because Windows is skipping Windows 9. They're going directly to Windows 10. That'll be the next operating system to come out of Microsoft, will be Windows 10. There will be no Windows 9 because so many people have fussed and fumed about Windows 8. They took things out of Windows 8 that were in Windows 7, like the ability to play the ability to play DVDs means you have to pay. Now you got to buy a program that will play the DVDs. Other things that are in the reports about why people are unhappy with Windows 8. And at the moment, I'm a little unhappy with Windows 7 or whatever it's doing with this computer that runs our video player. We're in the middle. I've been working late hours. Thanks to those of you who sent me notes last night. I really appreciate that. I don't think you'll mind if I say Lois and a few others that don't want me to mention their names, for praying for me with that cold I had. I don't have the cough tonight, but I do have some of the after effects of having had a cold where you feel stressed. But that's also partly because I'm running on very few hours of sleep trying to meet a deadline. I think I have a little bit beyond midnight tonight. I think I have a few hours into tomorrow where I won't be fined if I still get our software development plan into the people overseas by tomorrow. So we're working on that. That's actually a push upon me and pressure upon me that will produce some good, because the new software program that is a custom video player will help us do a lot of things in preparation for the program, and I'm going to ask those coders to make sure that the coding for that player program has no little bugs in it like the present one we're using, which is custom software, by the way. It's got some bugs in it because, like, right now it's hanging up. There's either some bugs in that or because our Windows 7 is goofed up and I do need to do a clean reinstall on it. Well, it looks like that's hung up. But I gave you got the gist of that story. We'll be watching for more out of what are we talking about? I got sidetracked here. We're talking about Belgium police. And Belgium is, modern day descendants of Belgium are those from one of the tribes of Israel. But let's go on, friends, to our next story, because it looks like that video player's not going to play the rest of that story. And okay, our next story only has a photograph with it anyway, so we'll just put the photograph up for this one, and I'll just tell you about this story from today's news. This is from today's news related to Israel and the Gaza flotilla raid back in 2010. No Israel charges over the Mavi Marmara. The caption under this photograph from today's news reads, "The Mavi Marmara was the lead ship in a 6-vessel convoy heading for Gaza in 2010. The International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor says she will not take action over Israel's raid on a Gaza-bound flotilla in 2010 that killed 9 Turkish activists. Fatou Bensouda said, despite reasonable basis to believe war crimes had been committed, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, had to prioritize larger-scale events. Israel said the ICC had wasted time on a, quote, politically motivated complaint. A politically motivated complaint. Lawyers who brought the case said they planned to appeal against the decision. 10 Israeli soldiers were injured in the incident on the Turkish-owned ship Mavi Marmara as it attempted to breach a blockade of the Hamas-run territory. It caused a deep rift between Israel and Turkey, who were former allies. And you know, friends, Turkey is an uncle to the tribes of Israel, Turkey being the modern-day descendants of Esau. And Esau was a brother to Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. Israel had 12 sons, who are the 12 tribes of Israel. He received the blessings from his father Isaac. And Esau, who thought he should have had the blessing, he sold his birthright to Jacob. Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. And even though he sold his birthright to Esau, Jacob and his mother Rachel, they pulled a fast one off on Isaac just before Jacob's death, and they put hair of Jacob's mom Rachel put hair all over Jacob and made him appear to be Esau, because Jacob, Israel, was going to give a blessing to Esau, not knowing Esau had sold the birthright to his brother Jacob, and not knowing that this son appearing before him, Jacob, was actually Jacob and not Esau. You know, he said, "Oh, your voice sounds like Jacob, but you got this hairy stuff on you like Esau." So, you know, he went ahead and blessed him with the blessing that Jacob was going to give Esau. But God intended for Jacob to get it anyway, but Jacob had this tendency to take matters into his own hands, as his mom also, Rachel, and she did. And so they pulled off a deceit, and the end result of that was decades of trouble with brother Esau, who is now modern-day Turkey. And later Esau made up with his brother Jacob, decades later. But then there would still be little frictions. And that's the way it is today. Once in a while, Turkey, modern-day Esau, Uncle Esau, is cool with the descendants of Jacob, of his brother Jacob. But then at other times, there's trouble. But Miss Bensouda, who's in charge of this International Criminal Court investigation, said she did not want to minimize, quote, the impact of the alleged crimes on the victims and their families, end quote, but she had to be guided by the Rome Statute, the founding treaty of the ICC. The Rome Statute is the founding treaty of the International Court. Quote, I have concluded, she said, that the potential cases likely arising from an investigation into this incident would not be of, quote, sufficient gravity to justify further action by the ICC, end quote. She said in a statement, Ms. Bensouda said she had referred to the reports of the various inquiries that had previously examined the incident in making her decision. In this next photograph, friends, the caption, well, actually, I got a video. This is videos from our archive from 2010. It's video from the Israeli army from June 2010 showing clashes on board the ship. And I've got the video up ready to roll, but there it is. Okay, our video screen was locking up. Let's take a look at this video. In total, there were 6 ships in the flotilla that were boarded in international waters about 60 miles from the Israeli coast on May 31, 2010.
The day after the traumatic and dramatic events out in international waters when Israeli commandos stormed a ship carrying activists bound for Gaza with a flotilla of aid. The ship was, as Israelis had promised, was stopped at sea. What nobody had anticipated was that 10 people would be killed. Also 8 Israeli troopers were injured. Today, Israel is defiant, saying it had to do what it did because its own soldiers came under attack. But Israel is facing a barrage of international criticism.
Friends, there's more video there, but there's no audio with it, and our video player's locking up. All right, well, I've been sick, and our equipment's not working like it should be working. Hopefully by next week, we'll get that fixed. I'll appreciate the prayers from those of you who regularly watch this program, and that God will help us get some of these things straightened out here. Help me get these things straightened out. I'm having to do it single-handedly right now. The activists, many from a pro-Palestinian Turkish group called the IHH, said they wanted to deliver aid to the Palestinian enclave by breaking Israel's naval blockade. Israel imposed the sea blockade after Hamas, which it has designated a terrorist group, seized Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit in 2006. Israel says the IHH is closely linked to Hamas. Commandos landed on the largest ship, the Mavi Marmara, by descending on ropes from helicopters. Clashes broke out immediately and the commandos opened fire, although a UN inquiry was unable to determine at exactly which point the commandos used live rounds. They weren't able to determine at which point the commandos used live rounds. Now, there's another photograph, if we can get our video player to pop it on up here. The caption for this video that I'm waiting to come up, let's see, is it going to come up if we cycle this? All right, there it is. The caption under this photograph reads, "Crowds of people took to the streets of Istanbul on the days the activist funerals were held in 2010. In a statement, Israel's foreign ministry said that Israel believes that it was pointless to initiate a preliminary inquiry in the first place. It said Israel regrets that the resources and precious time of the court, an institution established to combat the world's worst atrocities, were allocated to an unfounded and politically motivated legal complaint. An Israeli inquiry at the time found the actions of the Navy and the blockade were legal under international law, although there was some criticism of the planning of the military operation. And then I've got another photograph, but the caption for it comes up in a moment, I think. A UN panel in September 2011 agreed that the naval blockade was legal, but said that the loss of life and injuries resulting from the use of force by Israeli troops was, quote, excessive and unreasonable. You know, friends, man is writing the history of man that just proves man cannot govern himself. I mean, if this footage that I played, if it came out, we're having trouble, but in the video I was playing, you can clearly see that the people on board those ships, as soon as the Israeli commandos came down onto the ship, huge crowds of people with pipes started beating a whole bunch of men all around one commando, beating that commando with pipes. And I mean, with that many people against you, way outnumbered, beating you with pipes, I mean, how excessive and unreasonable is it to start shooting at a moment like that? The reasoning of men, a lot of it is biased and just sometimes just plain not logical. The panel's report said the commandos did face, quote, significant organized and violent resistance, exactly, requiring them to quote, use force for their own protection. Well, they got that right. Israel maintains its blockade of Gaza to try to prevent weapons or materials. Israel maintains its blockade of Gaza to try to prevent weapons or materials reaching Hamas militants, while allowing humanitarian aid into the territory. Palestinians say the policy is tantamount to collective punishment. Collective punishment, yeah. When you want to annihilate Israel. Israel and Turkey are not members of the ICC, which only has jurisdiction over its members and cases referred to it by the UN Security Council. Ms. Bensouda opened the preliminary investigation into the flotilla raid last year after the commandos, an ICC member, after the Comoros, an ICC member, filed a complaint as the Mavi Marmara, although Turkish-owned, was flying a Comorian flag. She said her office would continue to execute its mandate, quote, without fear or favor, while where the court's jurisdiction was established. But lawyers representing the Comoros vowed to appeal against the decision, saying it was a, quote, struggle for justice, humanity, and honor. A further quote, our struggle is not over. We will appeal to a higher court for a review and hopefully achieve a favorable result, attorney Razmazan Araturk said. All right, that's from today's news and related to Israel. And I have another story here. Let's see. Do I have video on this? What's Oh, okay. Yeah, I tried to play that video where that the Israeli army had released, which showed that the commandos were clubbed, beaten, and stabbed during that raid of a flotilla of Gaza-bound aid ships. I've got a few more notes. I think I'll share these with you while they're up on my teleprompter. Pro-Palestinian campaigners say the soldiers opened fire unprovoked when they landed on the ships, which were trying to break the 3-year blockade of Gaza. The BBC's Wire Davies describes what has happened 24 hours since the dramatic event. That was in the video I played. And okay, that's it on that, friends. So we'll go on now to a story related to the Islamic State. And let's see if this video will play that shows a 13-year-old boy who told the BBC of his plans to join Islamic State after watching jihadist videos and chatting to IS fighters online.
He is 13 years old. He calls himself Abu Hatab, and he plans to join Islamic State. They reach out online, social media feeding his ideas. Born in Syria, he was radicalized a year ago, learning to fight with another jihadi group. This is the story of how militants are seizing the next generation, building their army of the future. He insists on dressing like his heroes.
I like Islamic State because they pursue Sharia law and kill infidels as Allah ordered. We must behead them. Soon I will go there as a soldier. Recently I told them my age, and now they contact me even more than before.
A lot of people would say, you're 13 years old, enjoy your childhood.
I don't want to play with friends. Allah told us to fight for the next life, for paradise. I used to go out to the seaside, but now I have taken the righteous path.
You know, it's shameful, friends, what's happening in today's world. Kids, this 13-year-old, they're losing that wonderful stage of life where it's just normally fun to be a child and to do to have childish fun and not become a soldier at a teenage. And friends, we got a story tonight where a professing Christian family was killed, and I'll be showing a scripture. I want to go ahead and mention this to you ahead of time and ask you, can you think of a scripture that says people think they do God a service by killing Christians? I'll be putting that scripture up on the screen in a few moments after I play another couple videos and after we play the video that shows the Christian couple that was killed. But before we do that, I'll just ask you ahead of time to be thinking, can you think of where that scripture, off the top of your head now, don't cheat and look in your electronic concordance, at least not just yet. Can you think of where it is? And we'll be showing that on screen in a few moments. Of course, electronic concordances are a neat thing to help you find verses from the Bible. But our next story, before we go to that one on the Christian family that was killed by a policeman who claimed they had committed blasphemy. Before we go to that, we're going to show this video in an interview with a woman who's still living in Kobane, who described daily life in the city, which is besieged by Islamic State militants. Syrian Kurd Roshan Isso moved to her husband's hometown not long before it was attacked and says there are many other civilians, including young children. Speaking over the internet, she told the BBC's Murdad Faramand that she was no longer scared, quote, after a couple of roofs crashed above our head. We got used to it.
Most people rely on canned food and dairy products that were left over from before the attack, but many shops have also been destroyed and people have obtained a lot of food from them. Most of the wells here are not working because the pumps require electricity to work, and there are big problems with electricity. Most of our power comes from generators, and the generators need petrol or diesel, which are hard to come by.
Are women, children and elderly people there?
Apart from female fighters, there are many civilian women here as well. They try to help the fighters by washing their clothes, looking after the wounded, preparing food and so on. Everyone here, civilian or armed, is engaged in defending the town. There are also some children here. A few days ago I saw some children who were less than 4 years old.
Aren't you frightened?
In the first few days we were scared, but after a couple of roofs crashed above our head, we got used to it.
Okay, friends, and there were... all right, here's the story I was telling you about we'd go to that has the scripture that says they think they do God a service to kill Christians. There were protests in Pakistan following the mob killings of a Christian couple on Tuesday. A Pakistani policeman has been arrested after allegedly killing a man with an axe because he suspected him of committing blasphemy. Police say Faraz Naveed struck the victim, Tufal Nakvi, on the neck and head after the latter was arrested during a street fight yesterday. The victim is reported to have had a history of mental instability. His death comes after a Christian couple were killed by a mob two days ago, on Tuesday, for allegedly desecrating the Quran. Blasphemy is a highly sensitive issue in Pakistan, and critics argue that blasphemy laws are often misused to settle personal scores and unfairly target minorities. And the caption under this next video says, Christians Shama left and Shizad right were killed by a mob on Tuesday. Mohammed Amir, head of the city's civil lines police station, told BBC Urdu that Mr. Naveed had been arrested for the killing. He added that Mr. Nakvi, a Shiite Muslim, was not of a sound mind and would hurl abuses at anyone. There was some evidence, Mr. Amir said, that he had spent time in a mental asylum. The victim, a resident of Yang City, was supposedly in Gujarat in Punjab province to gain admittance to a Shia religious school. He reportedly blasphemed against companions of the Prophet Muhammad while in the police station. As Mr. Nakvi was killed in police custody, a special board will perform the post-mortem. Tuesday's killings also occurred in the Punjab, the country's most populous province. The female victim, a pregnant mother of 4, was beaten by a mob along with her husband. That's them pictured right here. And then they were burned to death in a brick kiln. Her father told the BBC she had really been killed over a wages dispute. And friends, the caption under this next picture, this probably really shock you in a way. Mumtaz Qadri smiled. Well, now, again, our equipment's having a problem. I have the picture punched up, but it's not coming over just yet. Let me go ahead and tell you what here's the picture. All right, the caption under this picture showing Mumtaz Qadri says that he smiled to cameras as he was arrested for shooting Governor Salman Taseer. You know, friends, there is a scripture that I mentioned to you. I asked you to see if you could think of it. As soon as it cycles, I'm going to put it up on the screen for you. But can you think of the scripture that says this? They shall put you out of the synagogues. Yea, the time comes that whosoever kills you will think that he does God service. Here's the scripture. You'll find it in John 16, verse 2. The time cometh that whosoever killeth you, you who are Christians, true Christians, will think that he does God service. In September, British citizen Muhammad Asghar, who suffers from mental illness, was shot in prison where he had been detained after he was accused of blasphemy. Mr. Asghar, who wrote letters claiming to be a prophet, survived the attack. Correspondents say the mere accusation of blasphemy is enough to make someone a target for hardliners, as is defending those accused of blasphemy or calling for the laws to be reformed. In 2011, former Punjab Governor Salman Taseer was shot by his bodyguard, Mumtaz Quadri, whose picture we had up on the screen a few moments ago, after he voiced opposition to blasphemy laws. Mr. Quadri, who is in the same prison as Mr. Asghar, is on death row, but a date for his execution has not yet been set. Critics of the laws say they are often used to settle personal grievances. Muslims constitute a majority of those persecuted, followed by minority Ahmadis. Now, friends, in our next story, right, I gave you that scripture, John 16, verse 2. And our next story related to the EU, and we'll have to close up with this one. Jose Manuel Barroso is the new Edenbridge bonfire effigy. This is from yesterday's news. The caption under this photograph with the news story from yesterday reads, "The 32-foot effigy of Jose Manuel Barroso will be burnt during bonfire celebrations." Let me bring that effigy, 32-foot effigy photograph forward. That effigy will be burnt during bonfire celebrations on Saturday, this weekend. An effigy of the outgoing president of the European Commission, Jose Manuel Barroso, is to be burnt as part of a Kent Bonfire Society's annual celebrations. Now, friends, anything that has to do with news out of Kent, England, I'm personally extremely interested in, because before my mother died, as she went through and made a video for us of her family, her heritage, her family background on her side of the family, in her lineage, there's a Duke of Kent, England. So anything coming up out of Kent, I'm personally very interested in that. So they'll have this bonfire this weekend in Kent, England, as part of the Kent Bonfire Society's annual celebrations. And they'll burn this effigy of Jose Barroso. Mr. Barroso was unveiled as Edenbridge's latest celebrity guy yesterday, following the likes of Katie Hopkins, Wayne Rooney, and Saddam Hussein. The society picked Jose Barroso because of the demand that the UK pay an extra £1.7 billion towards the European Union's budget. This 32-foot, 10 meter high steel-framed model of Mr. Barroso, again, will be burnt on Saturday. The effigy depicts the outgoing president with an invoice in his right hand. Let me bring this forward again. You can see in his right hand there's an invoice, the one for the 1.7 billion pounds that he says the UK owes to the European Union. There's that invoice in his right hand and a bulldog with a Union flag in his mouth under his left arm. Edenbridge Bonfire Society member John Mitchell said, quote, "We do try very hard to pick somebody who's absolutely current in the news. Quote, we only made the decision on Tuesday of last week, and we started building Jose on Thursday of last week. It was a difficult one to decide as there was no clear favorite. We eliminated people one by one and were left with Jose. Last year, the Society's effigy was of broadcaster and columnist Katie Hopkins and featured the phrase, quote, speak before you think." Mr. Mitchell said, there's a little humor in this part of the news, friends. I don't know if we should read this one or not, but it's in the news. I'm just going to read it straight to you here. "There were a lot of people who wanted us to burn Katie Hopkins again, but she's put on all that weight. She put a lot of weight on, so building her would have been a lot of extra work. The Society runs the bonfire celebrations to raise money for local charities." All right, friends, it was hard not to crack a smile during that one. All right, it's supposed to be, for a little bit of fun. There's one more story that relates to the EU, so we'll go just a few minutes over a half hour tonight. The EU is to press Luxembourg over tax breaks amid fresh allegations. This story, I think, important to understand what the EU is up to and what they're doing and how strong they're becoming, even though at times they seem like they're weak and what have you. Ex-Luxembourg Prime Minister Jean-Claude Juncker is facing a tough first week as EU Commission President. The European Commission, that's the caption under this photograph from today's news. The European Commission is to press Luxembourg over new allegations it offered tax breaks for more than 300 global companies, an EU spokesman says. But Commission Chief and ex-Luxembourg Prime Minister Jean-Claude Juncker will not handle the probe. Pepsi and IKEA are among those accused of making deals with Luxembourg to save billions in tax in other countries. The revelations were published in a report by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICU. Luxembourg is already under investigation by the EU over suspected, quote, sweetheart tax deals with online retailer Amazon and the financing arm of car maker Fiat. Two other member states, Ireland and Malta, are also being investigated as part of the EU's crackdown on multinationals' tax avoidance schemes. Luxembourg Prime Minister Zagiar Batil has insisted that the deals abided by international rules on tax in comments reported by AFP news agency. And then, friends, let's see, I think I do have a picture we can put up that relates to a story I pulled from the archive from last year related to Germany's finance minister Schaeuble, who says he welcomes data on global tax evasion. Now listen to this story, and then I'm going to ask you a very important question. The caption under this photograph from from our archive from last year's news story on this reads, Grand Cayman, Caribbean tax havens are under EU scrutiny. The German finance minister has praised a media investigation exposing secret offshore banking, saying he wants more joint EU action against tax evasion. Wolfgang Schaeuble said, quote, I am glad about this report, which will increase the pressure. But getting global action against tax evasion. Now notice the words carefully. Quoting Mr. Schaeuble, he said, but getting global action against tax evasion was endlessly laborious work, he added. Quoting him further, tax dodges used by politicians, rich executives, and others were exposed in an international media investigation. Now, friends, I have a question for you, and that's this. Why would Germany's finance minister be concerned about global tax evasion? Anything outside of, not only outside of Germany that would directly affect Germany, but let's say that as a part of the EU, Germany would, let's say they would rightly have an interest in tax evasion from among the members of the EU, because that would affect the balance of powers and economic interest of the countries or states within the EU if there was uncovered tax evasion going on among its member states. But why would Germany have a reason or right to care about global tax evasion unless Germany is back to thinking again of Germany taking over the leadership of the world and ruling the world? You know, as Herbert W. Armstrong said, with a great deal of inspiration and wisdom behind these words, we are only between rounds. We're only between rounds of World War. Presently between round 2 and round 3. And round 3 will conclude, will it not, with the intervention of Jesus Christ, or else there would be no world left to rule over. I'll close with one scripture real quickly, friends. And while I was working on that, I got a nice box of chocolate on top of my Bible. I just took it off. To help keep me going while I was doing some heavy mental work on software development plans. But from Matthew 24 and verses 21 and 22, Jesus Christ explains that if he didn't intervene when he's planning on intervening, there'd be no world left to intervene for. For he says, for then, verse 21, Matthew 24, for then shall be a great tribulation. Let me throw our chart up behind me on the screen. I'll bring it forward for a moment. You see the fifth seal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns over, where it says number 5, great tribulation. That's the next major event to happen in prophecy. The first 4 seals are active right now. The first 4 horses, these colored horses, the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, the pale horse. I've gone over those many times. I'll just mention here for ending our program, those 4 seals are very active, have been since Jesus Christ. But this 5th seal is the next major event to happen. The Great Tribulation has not yet come, but it is coming and coming soon, just around the corner. And here's the way Jesus Christ described it. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. It's a time that's going to be so bad, nothing before it's ever been as bad as what's coming, and nothing after what's coming will ever again be as bad, thankfully. Friends, that's it for tonight's report. Thanks for joining me this Thursday night. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back again Sunday night for our next edition of news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. I'm on the weekend for those who know about that on a different channel. And until next time, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying, so long, friends, and good night.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.